A lot of girls.
Good to see everybody tonight. Good to be back in the Lord's house, isn't it?
Amen.
Good to see everybody. We'll get started tonight and see what we can learn tonight. Everybody had a good week so far? Everybody have a good day on Sunday? Everybody have anybody saved Sunday?
Yes, we did. There was a fellow, he was about, I guess, 21, 25, he pulled up on his moped, and so he was looking for a church, and he got saved actually before the fire started Sunday.
Well, good deal. Good deal. Good deal. We had 7 new kids on our van route on Sunday. It was a blessing. So excited about that. Well, let's have a word of prayer, then we'll jump into this tonight. Pray that the Lord gives us your class tonight, help us tonight, help everybody in the services tomorrow. Brother Charlie Branch, how about you open this up in prayer?
Heavenly Father, God, thank you for allowing us to be in this place tonight, Father. Thank you, God, for your precious holy word, Father. We come to study and learn of it tonight. God, I pray, Father, you put your anointing touch on it, Lord, as you have so many times for so many different men. God, I pray that you bless the men that stand tonight. I pray you give them liberty, Father, to teach us. Lord, I pray you'd open our hearts to the word that's given. Lord, let us learn of you. And God, I pray, Lord, for each need in this building. God, you know the hearts of your people. God, I pray you'll be with us tonight and help us, Lord. Open our ears to your word. Thank you for that you do. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. All right, I'm going to read you one verse, Jude 22, and I don't even know that I'm going to come back to it tonight. I will end this lesson, but I just don't know that we'll get all the way through this lesson tonight and look at some things tonight. None of this is in your book that I'm fixing to deal with. The next lesson in your book is dedication services. It deals with the dedication of a building and the dedication of a baby. And I'll just say this, read over those things. There's some good things in that. And I also say this, it's sad, but some preachers never have the privilege, some pastors never have the privilege of doing either one of those. And I'm thankful that I've not only had the privilege of doing numerous baby dedications at the church, but also a building dedication at the church, and I'm very thankful for that. There's some good things in there. And then the next lesson after that is doing a constitution for the church, dealing with bylaws and the articles of the church and everything. On that lesson, I'm going to make it real easy for you. Pick up the phone and call Christian Law Association and tell them that you need that done, and they'll take care of you. That's exactly the way that we've done it at our church. And when it comes to a few more details, when it comes to, of course, your tax ID number is very simple, but when it comes to 501, completely doing a 501c3 where you're not just recognized on the state level, but on a federal level, there's a whole lot more to that, a whole lot more. And I would recommend Harbor Compliance. That's who we worked with Foothills. I know that's who MTM worked with and who our church is actually working with right now on some things. So those 2 lessons, they're good, but I just didn't feel the need to really deal hands-on with them. So here's what I want to look at tonight and deal with tonight. The Bible says in Jude, verse number 22, and if some had compassion, making a difference. And of some had compassion, making a difference. Compassion is something that we need to learn as preachers. It's something that we need to know. It's something that we need to practice. And it's not always bless God, listen to me attitude. There's times that you're going to have to learn to sit down and weep with people and have compassion with them. Here's what I want to talk to you about. I'm going to start it tonight. I'll try to get done with it tonight, but at the same time, I don't want to rush it. I may roll over into next week with it also. But here's what I'm going to deal with, at least tonight, probably next Tuesday night also. This subject right here, dealing with tragedy. And I want to look at this tonight, and I'll say this again before I get done. I'm trying to think. I've done my associates through Vision Bible College. I done my graduate and my bachelor's through Northwood. I done my master's and my doctorate through Piedmont College of Theology. And I can honestly say, in all of those, in all of that time, nobody ever taught a lesson like I'm going to teach you the next two Sunday nights, next two Tuesday nights. And it's something that you don't hear taught about. As a matter of fact, the first time that I ever had to deal with this, the pastor picked up the phone, called me, and said, I need you to go to the hospital, take care of something. And whenever I walked in, I sure wish somebody would have given me some things that I'm going to give you tonight. I'm not the best on this subject. I have dealt with it a lot. On a church basis, and then also on a law enforcement chaplaincy basis also. So let's look at some things. First and foremost, us as preachers are preachers. You hear what I just said? First and foremost, that's what we are. And I say it this way, first and foremost right now, I'm a pastor. Now understand this, first and foremost, I'm a husband, then I'm a father, and then I'm a pastor. But when we're talking about the realm of ministry, first and foremost, we're a pastor. In our society today, the preacher is so much more than a preacher, especially if he's a pastor. He's so much more than that. Brother Chris has found out that he's a moving company. And the preacher ends up becoming so much more than that. I wrote this down today. Since I've been a pastor, I've also been a mechanic, a plumber, a roofer, built handicap ramps, cut trees, planned weddings, organized fundraisers, been a financial advisor, a psychiatrist. Are you with me? Yeah. Done CPR, literally done CPR on people. Delivered countless death notifications to all age groups of people. And on the story goes. You said, preacher, what are you saying? I've been a farmer. Brother Chris understands that. I had no idea about working cows. I've become a pastor, but Brother Chris, we can work with the best of them now, okay? And we need to band them, cut them, whatever needs to be done. We've been right down that road. And you said, preacher, why do you say that? I say that to say this. Being a pastor is so much more than just standing in the pulpit and preaching. And I say this to you, that is the fun part of it. Standing, studying the Word of God and standing in the pulpit and preaching. Look, Keith, man, that's the great part of it. It's all these other things. Nobody told me that I was going to have to learn how to roof a widow's house because she couldn't afford to buy the roof. She couldn't afford to pay nobody to put it on, but her roof was leaking, so you know what we done? We bought the roof, and then some of us got together and we roofed the house. Nobody ever told me that I was going to have to learn how to organize a tree company and take trees down, but you know what? That's exactly what we've done for widows in our church. So it's so much more than that. Now think about this word tragedy with me tonight. Here's what it means. An event causing great suffering, destruction, and distress, such as a serious accident, crime, or natural catastrophe. Bible Gateway analysis certain search patterns. Say that real quick. Certain search patterns surrounding the concert shooting on October the 2nd, 2017, as well as 18 other major incidents of violence over the past 11 years, including Virginia Tech in 2007, Sandy Hook Elementary in 2012, Santa Bernardino in 2015, and Orlando's Pulse nightclub in 2016. Among the site's 150 million plus visitors a year, the three verses that saw distinct spikes in readership around those shootings, around those tragedies, was these three verses. John 16:33. These things have I spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In this world ye shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. Psalms 34:18, the Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. Romans 12:19, dearly beloved, avenge not yourself, but rather give place unto wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord. She said, John, now why did you bring all that up? I brought all that up to say this. Of over 150 million viewers of this website, they found out that there was a spike in Bible reading and in Bible search during a tragedy in our country. So I'm saying all that to say this. During a time of tragedy is a great time to reach somebody.
Yes, sir.
It's a great time to reach somebody. As we begin thinking about a tragedy, one thing we must remember, everyone reacts to tragedy in different ways. Everybody reacts different ways. As a matter of fact, if somebody come in here tonight and screamed real loud and hit the wall back there, every person in here is going to react different. I'm probably going to throw the pulpit at them. Some of you, it's not going to move. Everybody's emotions is different. So as pastors and as preachers and as laymen, when we begin to deal with people dealing with tragedy, we've got to remember everybody's going to deal with this thing completely different. Some's going to cry, some's going to scream, some's going to cuss, some's going to hear, and I'll say you'll hear this again, the fight or flight. That's what you're going to have in dealing with this. What may seem as nothing to some people may seem as major to other people. I'll give you an illustration. Several years ago, I was still very active in the fire department. I still had all my certifications. I was still running calls all the time. And now I've just really transferred more to the role of a chaplain and more in the sheriff's office than anything. But I was still real active in the sheriff's office, or in the fire department at that time. And on the old Low Gap Road, we got dispatched out the old Low Gap Road next to FBI Mountain to a vehicle accident. And it was a rollover. The call came out, a double injection, one still inside the vehicle, possible pin in. And we started to it, and I'd been to numerous calls in my life. We started to it. We pulled up, make a long story short, there was a couple injections. They already was starting to bandage them because it was a long ways out for me. Old Low Gap, nothing's close to Old Low Gap Road. But anyway, in FBI Mountain. But anyway, I pulled up, and they had confirmed that there was a pin in on the radio. Whenever I pulled up, I throwed my gear on, and I went straight to the engine, and the car was off in a little ravine. Started talking back and forth. What do you need? You know, how do we need to stabilize the vehicle? What rescue tools do you need? What do we need to pull off the truck? What do we need to get this going? So we started talking back and forth. I slid down the bank and started assessing the situation with one of the other officers to make sure that the vehicle was stabilized before we started extrication. And there was a guy inside. And the guy inside was in the last moments of his life. He was in snoring respirations. You could tell that he was struggling with everything in him. You could tell it was just about over with. And we done everything we could do. Finally, we got a person in there with him trying to bag him. You could tell the airway was closing up. And to make about a 15-minute extrication short, we ended up coding him right there on the scene and calling it a confirmed code blue. To me, after we done that, we put a blanket over the guy, put him in the back of the ambulance, started cleaning the stuff up, and we was ready to go to the house. One of the guys grabbed me and he said, hey, such and such was the first one here. And I said, all right. I said, this is probably the first fatality he's ever been on. He said, it is. And I said, well, where is he at? And they said, he went walking that way. And I said, well, somebody needs to find him. And I went and found the guy, sat down with the guy and talked to the guy. To make a long story short, he was having an extremely, and for probably a month or so, had an extremely hard time with that call. It was, again, his first fatality he'd ever been on, the first person he'd ever been around in the last moments of their life. I guess I'm cold. It didn't bother me a bit. I thought in the back of my mind, I hope he was ready to meet God. If he's not, it's too late now. And I just went about my everyday life because I had seen it so much. So I said that to say this, everybody deals with tragedy in a different way. Everybody deals with tragedy in a different way. I remember the very first fatality I ever ran. I was 16 years old, and me and a guy named Eddie King pulled a 6-year-old out from underneath the car that was dead. They airlifted a 6-month-old that ended up dying, and then the mama was also dead in the front of the car. And it never did really bother me. And maybe I'm just that cold-hearted. And you can say what you want to on this. I think God gives that gift to some people to be able to do that kind of work. Yeah. But I say this to you. Everybody deals with it different ways. And when you become a pastor, you're going to have to deal with tragedy. As a preacher, you're going to have to deal with tragedy. As a layman in the church, each individual sitting in here, people in your church, I'm sure looks up to you. And there's going to be some time along the way that you're going to have to deal with tragedy. And what I mean by that, you're the person that they're going to look up to. I was thinking about this day, February the 6th, 2011. It was a Sunday afternoon. I was sitting at the house. I was actually just sitting down to eat supper or to eat lunch. My phone rang, and on the other end of the phone was one of the faithful people to our church. And he said, preacher, he said, I just walked into my mother-in-law's house. He said, there's a note hanging on the ceiling fan that gives the family instructions what to do, and my father-in-law's not here. And he said, what do you think this is? And I said, well, buddy, it sounds to me like it's a suicide note. I said, that's exactly what it sounds like. And I said, where would he be? Tell me, what do you think? And they was in a complete panic. And you know, I tell you what people does when they're in a complete panic? They call the pastor. So many times, Jeremiah, how many times have you seen that in your home as a boy growing up? They call the pastor in a complete panic. The pastor, I told you, he's a psychiatrist, he's a plumber, he's a farmer. And at this point, he's the stability. Right. He's the stability of chaos. Yep. And he told me, he said, I think this is maybe where he went. He went back to where he worked at. And I said, all right. I said, if you'll come to my house, we'll go get your wife. And he said, okay, which was his wife's dad. And I picked up the phone, called an officer, and I said, hey, you may need to run by this location pretty quick. Like, I think an individual's there may have committed suicide. In just a couple minutes, he called me back, and he said, you're right. He said, he's in. He said, we can see him through the window. We'll make an entry into the place right now. Now, I drove him to his house. The gentleman that had called me, I went in and had to tell his wife, which is still a faithful member of our church, that her daddy, that was her strong arm for her whole life, had just taken his life. And it's tough. It's tough. But we've got to learn how to deal with situations like that, because they do look up to us in those situations. Now, I want to say this to you, and I'll say it again before we're done. Honesty is always the best. Mm-hmm. Honesty. You're honest with it. I look straight at it. I said, your dad is at this place. He has taken his own life. And she said, I've got to go there. And I said, no, you're not. I said, I'm taking you to your mama's house. And then I'll go over there and make sure that everything's handled the right way. And that's what's happened. Now, here's what I want to look at. It's stated that anything that's said in the first 12 to 24 hours to somebody after tragedy is a blur. As a matter of fact, have you ever heard this statement? The past 2 days has just been a blur. I don't even remember. It's just been a blur. So when you're talking to those individuals, remember this. They're in an absolute state of panic. Yeah. They have just lost sometimes a family member, sometimes their dearest friend, sometimes their child, and they are in an absolute panic. Matter of fact, there's been times that I've got them like this and said, now look, listen to me. And I've made eye contact with them and said, you need to listen to what I'm saying right now. Can you hear me? Are you listening to me? And in some sense, I don't mean this ugly, but you treat them like a child to a certain extent. Why? Because adrenaline is rushing. Their mind is rushing wide open. So how do we deal with these things? And I'm going to deal with the hospital setting and going to the hospital. I'm going to deal with some visitation part of that. Let me give you a couple more illustrations. And then we'll jump into this. Before I had any kind of training, the only training that I had was Barkerology, and that was living with Alan Barker. And if you don't know him, and most of you don't know him really, you think you do, but you really don't, he don't talk. Okay? So when you're headed to the hospital in a tragic situation, as a young man sitting in the car beside of it, he don't tell you nothing he's going to say. He don't tell you no way he's going to deal with it. He goes, he takes care of it, and then you come home. So nobody had ever said, here's the way to deal with this. I was the assistant pastor at Northwood at the time, which Dad was not pastor there then, but I was assistant pastor at the time. I had done a wedding. It was the first wedding I'd ever done. And right after that, the wife became with a child. And of course, 9 months later, the baby was born. The baby lived about 15 minutes and died. I got a phone call and was asked to go down there to the hospital. And I'll never forget pulling up at Forsyth Hospital that day, thinking, what am I going to say? What am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? I wish somebody would have told me some things that I'm going to tell you tonight and next Tuesday night. I had not been pastoring at Amazing Grace long at all. One of the ladies in the church called me and she said, "Preacher, I need you to come over here." I said, "Okay." I said, "Can I ask why?" And she said, it was one of her family members. It was a husband and a wife, and the husband had killed the wife and then killed himself, and they had a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old child. And she had the 6-year-old and the 4-year-old child, and I had to go do the notification to the 6-year-old and 4-year-old child that the daddy had just killed the mama and then killed himself. And you said, "Preacher, why are you saying this?" Here's the reason I'm saying this. As a preacher, there's going to be times that you get called on things like this. There's going to be times. How do we deal with this? How do we deal with this? Well, I want to deal with a hospital visit to begin with. I'm dealing with tragedy. I want to deal with a hospital visit to begin with. And there's numerous different hospital visits. Now, anytime you're in a hospital, to a certain extent, it's a tragedy to somebody. Yeah. Whether it's a broke arm, whether it's a stomach bug that's got bad, if they're in the hospital, more than likely there's a mom and daddy somewhere panicking. Okay? If Jeremiah calls Daddy today and says, "We're at the hospital with Uncle John," well, what's wrong? Well, it's kidney stone still, and I hope that don't happen. Been there before, done that. Got the proof from all the bills I paid for the 3 surgeries for it. But anyway, Mom and Daddy is going to still be at a point of certain extent tragedy in their life because something has happened to their child. So when we think about a hospital visit, here's the way that I divided this out. You got several different types. You got an emergency room, you got a general sickness, you got a surgery, you got a birth, and then you got life and death. And that's kindly the way it runs in a hospital setting. Let's deal with this one first, emergency room. Now, how do you visit an emergency room, preacher? Well, let me say this. It all depends on what's going on. Because if Sally has stumped her toe and is going to the ER, I'm probably not going to go. Okay? Remember, my first priority is the preacher. Are you with me? And it's Saturday evening at 7 o'clock. I'm trying to finish getting all my thoughts together for Sunday. And Sally stumped her toe, and Billy's called me to tell me that Sally's hurt. But it's not a life or death situation, and she's at the ER. Guess what? I'm not going to go. I'm going to talk to him and say, "Hey, let me know what the doctor says, and if everything is okay, then I'll see you in the morning. If it's something bad, you let me know. If there's going to be any kind of surgery, you let me know, and I'll be there." Now, if Sally calls me and Billy has got the stomach bug and got rushed, and that's actually in my notes. Billy is in my notes. And Billy walked in. But anyway, Billy's here tonight. He's here. Look right there. It says, Billy has the stomach bug. If Billy has the stomach bug and goes to the hospital, and Sally calls me and says, "Preacher, Billy's puking everywhere and we're at the hospital," I'm not going. Here's a couple reasons why. Number one, I have a very low immune system. I take a medication, I take a shot. Matter of fact, I took it last night. That's called Humira. I have arthritis, and I have to take Humira, and it attacks my immune system. And if Billy's puking, I don't need to be there. Okay? Now, if she calls back and says, "Preacher, Billy started puking blood, and he's passed out, and they're having to intubate him, then guess what? I'm going to the hospital. So when we think about these visits, and we think about this emergency room visit, that's the way it is. If it's major, then I'm going to go. If it's not, then I'm probably not going to. Then we got the second type of hospital visit. And that's what I consider is this, a general sickness. Here's an illustration. Miss Ganny at our church, her potassium usually about once a year will get out of whack. And she'll end up in the hospital. They'll think she's having a stroke to begin with. And it always scares us. But every time since I've been there, her potassium's been out of whack. So you know what they do? They admit her to the hospital. She stays a couple of days. They get it all straightened out. And then she comes home. Now, again, it depends on what time of the year it is, whether I'm going to the hospital to visit her. And you say, why? Because if the hospital is rampant with the flu, and they've got a restriction on people coming in the hospital, these right here are great tools. Yeah. Hey, honey, how you feeling today? Do you need something? Do you need me to come up there? No, preacher, don't you come up here. Well, you call me if you need me. Me or Leslie one is going to call her every day she's in there. But if it's not flu season, then I'm going by the hospital. When I do a general sickness visit, I don't go to talk for an hour. And Brother Josh has visited with me, Brother Chris has visited with me, Dakota's visited with me. I walk in, hey, how you feeling today? All you tests coming back okay? Everything running all right? Yeah, preacher, everything's going good. The food any count? No? All right, well, let's have a word of prayer. We'll pray together. I love you. My general sickness hospital visit at the longest point, 99% of the time, is 10 minutes. It don't matter if it's Charlotte, or if it's Gastonia, or if it's Northern Regional, or Hugh Chadds. Yes.
People already feel vulnerable. They don't have their makeup on.
Absolutely.
They've not had a bath. They don't want somebody to come in for 2 hours.
And stay all day. That's not what it is. So we're stepping in. I love you. I appreciate you. Now, number 3 is this, a surgery. If somebody is having a surgery. I'm just telling you the way I deal with things, okay? For years, I always went to the hospital the day that they was having surgery. I prayed with them at the hospital. Over the past year, I have changed that. And here's the reason why. Again, this is me. Here's the reason why. If Brother Chris is going in the hospital in the morning to have knee surgery, when he gets to the hospital, they're going to check him in. They're going to take him up there. They're going to get him in the room. They're going to take off his clothes and give him a hospital gown. And you know the reason it's called ICU, don't you? Because in a hospital gown, when you're walking away from somebody, everybody's going, ICU. But anyway, they're going to put him in a hospital room. They're going to start running IVs in him. They're going to start giving him medication. There's going to be doctors coming in and out. He's going to be signing papers. They're going to be talking. I'm going to walk in and maybe get 3 minutes to have a word of prayer with him. So here's the way that I do it. I go the night before. I'll set up a time with that person. If Brother Chris came to my church, hey, Brother Chris, I know you're having surgery Wednesday morning. Is sometime Tuesday okay with you for Leslie and I to come by and see you and Miss Heather and spend a little bit of time with you? And here's what it opens up the door to do. Not just, hey, let's pray, let me get out of here. Man, how's things been going? Are you nervous about this? I'd be nervous about this. Somebody sticking a needle in my knee, I'd be nervous about this. And it gives you, me personally, again, it gives me more one-on-one time with that individual. And then I'll say this, Miss Heather, as soon as he goes into surgery tomorrow, send me a text. And as soon as he comes out, send me a text. If he's feeling like it tomorrow afternoon, I'll run by the hospital a minute and see him. If he's not, don't worry about it. I'll catch you when you come home. Now, that's the way I do. Brother Jeremy, you want to talk about how you do?
I still go in the mornings, but I like that idea. I think it just generally depends on your congregation. You need to lead your congregation.
I have a few older people that I will go in the morning.
Because that's what they've been used to.
Yeah.
Some congregations don't need a bedside preacher. Others almost demand it.
Yes.
I've always been trained to be there for them like you said, but the night before, or any preacher don't visit, he ought to resign probably.
Daddy, it absolutely drives him crazy. If we've got somebody at the church having surgery, he'll call me the morning that they're at surgery. Well, how's it going over there? Well, I'm not there. What? You're not there? What do you mean you're not there? Why are you not there? Here's the reason I'm not there. I went and seen him the night before. Now let me say this. If it is a major surgery, when I say major, I mean it's something major. They're having a open heart surgery, or it's something major. I'm going to be there from the start to the finish. When Brother Heath's father-in-law had his, what do you have? Bleeding strokes, what I've always said. There's a big term for that. It was Christmas Eve, and I was at the ER at Northern. We left from there, practically followed the ambulance down to Forsyth, and whenever we got there, they said they was doing surgery, and I guess it's about 2 o'clock Christmas morning before we left. So understand that there is different levels there, okay? Now, I also want to say something about this. If you're a bivocational pastor, in other words, Brother Jonathan has got to work in the morning. He can't get out of that. He has a demanding job. Brother Keith, if he's pastoring, he's got to work the next day. He's got meetings. He's got a demanding job. Both of them have a demanding job in the networking work. That gives you a good chance as a bivocational pastor. Hey, can I come by, tomorrow night? Can I pray with you tomorrow night and spend a little bit of time with you? And then you touch bases with me as the surgery's going. So it goes with that too. Now, think about this. The next one is a birth. I'm not going to be there. Matter of fact, I'm not. If you call me and tell me you're going to the hospital, we got pregnant in the church right now. 3, 4, 5, something like that. If they called me and said, I'm on my way to the hospital, praise God. If anything happens, you tell me. Because here's the reason why. When Leslie was having our children, I didn't want no preacher in the room.
No, sir.
Leslie didn't want no preacher in the room. I'm talking about from the time that we checked in, because when you check in, unless they're inducing, when you check in, that means she's gone into labor. And even though she may have an epidural, she don't. So I'm just not going. If the baby is born and something's wrong, then I'm going to be there. And if I know that they go to the hospital, I try my best to stay very local that day while they're at the hospital. But I'm not going to be there. I'm just not going to do it. Matter of fact, we've got Brother Tim Angel and Miss Amy had a baby. The baby's probably 7 weeks old now, and I've still not even seen the baby. Here's the reason why. Whenever the baby was born, sickness was starting to go around, I talked to them. I said, I'm praying for you. If something goes wrong, you let me know. Since the baby's been home, the flu epidemic has hit like crazy. They didn't go to Thanksgiving. They didn't even go to Christmas. But you know what I've done throughout that time? I've talked to them. Matter of fact, I talked to them today, and I said, man, I can't wait to see the baby. I can't wait to see y'all. I said, but Brother Tim, people in my house has been sick. And he said, we don't want you to come sick. Yeah. So that's a very private time. Yeah. Childbirth is a very private time. And that's the way that I am on that. Let's hit this one more. Life or death situation. Life or death situation. This could fall at a home. This could fall in a hospital. Or this could fall in a hospice house. A life or death situation. What do I do in that? The visits will differ every time, because everybody's different. Every family's different. If it is Brother Joe was a life or death situation, the family wanted me staying with them. Matter of fact, I was the primary contact through all of that day. The doctors was told to talk to me. The nurses was told to talk to me. And I hated that, because I was afraid they was going to tell me Brother Joe was dead, and then I was going to have to tell the family. However, I stayed with them the entirety of that time because they wanted me to. In death, again, everybody is different. I have some people in our church that when loved ones has passed away, I have called them. They have told me during the last hours of their life, hospice says that, and the hospice don't know everything, but they're usually pretty close when it gets down to those last hours of somebody's life. They called me and said that we've got hours is what we've got left. Well, you want me to run by and have prayer with you? And I've had some say this, preacher, I know you're praying for us, but we want to spend this time with our loved one. Absolutely. You got my number? You call me if you need me, and I'll be right there. Is it okay if we have a quick word of prayer over the phone? Absolutely. I prayed over the phone with them, and then they called me and told me, Mama's passed away, Daddy's passed away, loved one's passed away. Here's when we're going to the funeral home. We'll let you know when the funeral is. And that's fine. And I've met them the night of the viewing or the day of the viewing before the funeral. And that's the first time I've seen them the whole time, because that's what they want. However, there is some, and I think Brother Jeremy will testify to this, that want you there the whole time. There is some that want you there the whole time. Brother Josh, when Miss Bridget went home to be with the Lord, probably the last 48 hours of that, I would say probably 36 to 40 hours of that last 48 hours, I was with Brother Josh. That's what he wanted. Now, I wasn't right up beside him all the time, and I wasn't right beside Miss Bridget's bed the whole time, but I was in the house, or I was in the yard. It's called a ministry of presence. I was just there because that's what he wanted. When Miss Bridget passed away, I left and pulled in the driveway at my house. And I walked inside, turned the shower on, because you need to take them after 2 days. Turned the shower on, and Brother Josh sent me a message and said, she's gone. I turned the shower back off, got back in the car, and went right back over there.
Did you put your clothes on first?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. But that's what he wanted. So what I'm saying to you is this. Everybody's going to be different.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be different. Brother Jeremy, you want to
You gotta
expand
be
on
prayed
that?
up, led by the Spirit of God. And,
Yes.
And don't say anything unless God pushes you to say it.
Absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
can say the wrong thing at the wrong time.
So quick. So quick.
A lot of times
And
it's best just to sit there until it's your time to pray.
that's exactly right.
Don't go joking at a death
No.
situation. It's not time.
No, absolutely not.
Light stuff. It's be solemn.
Matter of fact, the other day I was actually on call with our sheriff's office, and it was a pretty serious call, and I got called out to go with them to it because of the nature of it, and we pulled up, we went into the residence, we talked a long time, we started leaving. One of the patrol officers looked over at me and he said, "Chap," said, "you're awful quiet today." And here's what I responded to him: there's a time to talk and there's a time to be quiet. And that day it was my time to be quiet. And if they wanted to know something, if they wanted something on a spiritual basis, then I would have been glad to say it. So you learn there's a time to talk and a time to be quiet. And I want to say this to you. At that time when that loved one does pass away and you're there and they ask you to pray, that's not a time for a 45-minute prayer praying for all the missionaries and pygmies in Africa. That's a time to thank God for loving us, to thank God for the time that we spent together. If that individual was saved, thank God that they're suffering. That's what we did that night with Miss Bridget. We said, thank God she's not suffering no more. Thank you, God, for letting her go home to be with you. So there is a multitude of different things right there when it comes to visits. Go ahead, Brother.
There is never a time, ever, where it's right for you to say, I know how you feel.
No.
Ever.
And I'm
There's
going
not
to deal
one.
with that in
There's
depth.
not one.
No.
You do not. Nobody knows how any individual feels. Don't use that.
Absolutely not. And next week, I'm going to go into that in depth. What is some things we say? What is some things we don't say? And here's what we're going to deal with next week. We're going to deal with doing a death notification. When Sally calls you and says, Billy's dead, I need you to go tell the kids. How are you going to do that? Because that happens, doesn't it, Brother Jeremy? That happens. And how are you going to deal with that? Here's the 4 steps that I go through, and I'm not going to deal with them tonight. We'll look at them next week. But there's 4 steps that I go through. Number 1, there's the plan. Number 2, prepare. Number 3, deliver. And number 4, follow up. And you say, what is, I'll deal with all of that next week. But it's important. It's important. That very first step is very important. Number one, I'm going to say, and I'm not going to deal with this tonight, but I'm going to say, Sally, how do you know Billy's dead? Well, such and such called me and said he was. I'm not going to tell nobody on such and such's work. Are you with me right there?
Right.
You got to plan. You got to know some things before you go do a death notification. You got to plan some things. When you're going to do that notification, as you're going to deliver that death notification, that person that you're delivering that death notification to, think about this. Does that person have health issues? If that person has severe anxiety, you need to know those things. Because there's a good chance when you're pulling up to do that death notification and you knock on that door, and you never do one by yourself, and you knock on that door with one of your deacons, and you say, hey, me and Brother Matt needs to come in and sit down and talk to you just a second. And you sit down with him again and talk to him and say, Billy's just died. Not passed away. I don't use passed away. I don't use past. I say died, dead, has been killed in a car accident. When you say that, you need to know in the back of your mind, is this person the type of person that all of a sudden is going to flip a gasket? Yeah. How am I going to react to that? If I say, if that's Billy and Sally's dead, and I say, Billy, Sally's dead, and he flips, what am I going to do now? He's gone crazy. He took off running in the back and grabbed a gun. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? So there's a lot of things in that death notification, that, and I'll just put it this way. Nobody ever told me any of this until I went into law enforcement chaplains. That's when I started learning about it. And there's some great tools. There's some great things, and we'll go into all of it and deal with it. Go ahead.
Before you dismiss, we need to have a word of prayer. Because Sally and Billy's had a rough week.
They've had a bad week. They've had a bad week. Both of them's died twice. If there's kids there, what are you going to do with the kids?
2 months ago, I had a real bad situation with Phil. His mind was just gone.
Yes.
He was out of it. I mean, for even, he asked me to come to the funeral home to help him with the financial part of it. He couldn't even focus.
Yeah.
I sat there and I said, you know, there were bad decisions he was about to make, and I called him and said, look, you can go a different route. I had to hold him up. This is a big man. He's like 6'3" and weighs about 275. He fell down, and me and Chris Caldwell had to hold him. I mean, Becca was talking to me after. She said, how'd y'all hold him up? I said, I have no idea. Because, I mean, literally, I was under him, carried him to the
Yes, sir.
It's all kinds of situations. Every situation different. You better
It
be filled
is.
with the Holy Ghost.
That's exactly right. But when the Sunday afternoon that I told you about, where I had to go tell the lady from our church that her daddy had killed himself, I literally, practically carried her to the vehicle and put her in the vehicle. And the day of the funeral, me and it may have been her nephew, but me and one other gentleman had to, she collapsed at the coffin, started to go down. No, it was me and the lady working from the funeral home. We called her and practically carried her back to the back room so she could catch her breath and everything before the funeral started.
Something law enforcement, doctors and nurses, and preachers face, you have to fight being calloused heart.
You do.
You really have to work. You won't understand that the first year you pastor, but after you've dealt with death time after time after time, it's their first time, a lot of
Yeah.
it. And you have to stay fresh with that. Same way with law enforcement and doctors, but
And that comes back to the verse that I read and told you that we was coming back to, and of some have compassion, making a difference. And I guess I'm just cold-hearted. Or it's where I've dealt with it so much. Because I not only deal with it just as a pastor, but as a chaplain for our county, you deal with things like that over and over and over and over again. And every situation's different. Everybody's gonna handle it different. There is a right way and a wrong way though, when it comes to that. So we'll deal with death notifications next week. Father, thanks for this time. Pray, Lord, you help Brother Jeremy in Jesus' name. Amen. Sally and Billy too.
If y'all are all